You've been lying to yourself. And the worst part, you don't even realize it. Right now, as you're reading this, there's something in your life you've been putting off. Maybe it's that business idea you've been researching for 6 months. Maybe it's the conversation you need to have but keep avoiding. Maybe it's the skill you know would change everything, but you're waiting for the right time to start learning it. Here's what I need you to understand. That thing you're avoiding, it's not going to get easier tomorrow. The perfect moment you're waiting for, it doesn't exist. And every single day you spend preparing, planning, and overthinking is a day someone else is out there doing the exact thing you're dreaming about. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. When was the last time you actually surprised yourself? When was the last time you did something that made you think, wow, I didn't know I had that in me? If you're struggling to answer that question, it's because you've become too comfortable living in your head. You've mistaken thinking for doing. You've confused planning for progress. And somewhere along the way, you've convinced yourself that preparation is the same thing as action. It's not. I'm going to be brutally honest with you, because someone needs to be. You don't have an information problem. You have an execution problem. You're not stuck because you don't know enough. You're stuck because you won't start with what you already know. And deep down, you know this is true. You can feel it every time you close another tab, finish another video, read another article, and then do absolutely nothing with any of it. Think about the last 30 days of your life. How many times did you say, I'm going to do this, and then didn't? How many Monday mornings started with determination and ended with disappointment? How many nights did you go to bed thinking, tomorrow will be different, knowing full well it probably won't be? This isn't about motivation. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are unreliable. This is about something far more fundamental. This is about understanding that your life is not shaped by your intentions. It's not shaped by your knowledge. It's not even shaped by your potential. Your life is shaped by your actions, period. And here's the thing that nobody wants to hear. Every day you're not taking action, you're taking action to stay exactly where you are. Inaction isn't action. It's a choice. It's you deciding that comfort is more valuable than growth, that safety is more important than progress, that the fear of failure is scarier than the certainty of regret. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I need to be ready. I need to know more. I need to plan better. I need to wait for the right circumstances. And that's exactly the trap, because your brain will always find a reason why now isn't the right time. It's too busy. It's too late. It's too early. You're too tired. You don't have the resources. You need to learn more first. These aren't reasons. They're excuses disguised as logic. Let me tell you what's really happening. Your brain is designed to keep you safe, not to push you forward. It sees uncertainty as danger and comfort as safety. So every time you think about doing something new, something challenging, something that might actually change your life, your brain immediately starts generating scenarios. What if you fail? What if people judge you? What if you're not good enough? And his thoughts feel so real, so convincing that you believe them. You mistake possibility for probability. You treat your fears as facts. But here's what I want you to understand. Those thoughts aren't truth. They're just your brain doing what it's wired to do, protect you from discomfort. The problem is, growth lives on the other side of discomfort. Progress requires you to do things that feel uncertain, uncomfortable, and sometimes downright scary. And if you wait until you feel ready, you'll be waiting forever. So let me ask you again, what are you avoiding right now? What's that one thing that keeps coming back to your mind, that keeps nagging at you, that you know you should be doing but aren't? Don't give me the surface answer. Go deeper. What is it really about? Is it fear of failure? Fear of success? Fear of judgment? Fear of realizing you're not who you thought you were? Because here's the hard truth. The thing you're most afraid of doing is probably the exact thing you need to do. Your resistance is pointing you toward your growth, and every time you choose comfort over courage, you're reinforcing a pattern that will keep you stuck for years. Now, I'm not here to give you another motivational speech that makes you feel good for 10 minutes and then fades away. I'm here to show you a completely different way of thinking about action, about progress, about how successful people actually operate. And it starts with understanding something that most people get completely backwards. The backwards equation. Most people think the equation for success looks like this: clarity to confidence to action. They believe they need to first get clear on exactly what to do, then build confidence in their ability to do it, and only then take action. So they spend months, sometimes years, trying to get clarity. They research, they plan, they consume content, they wait for some magical moment when everything just clicks and they'll know exactly what to do. But that moment never comes. And you know why? Because clarity doesn't come from thinking. It comes from doing. The real equation looks like this. Action leads to clarity, leads to confidence. You take action first, even when it's messy and imperfect. That action gives you feedback. That feedback gives you clarity. And that clarity builds genuine confidence. Not the false confidence of, I think I can do this, but the real confidence of, I know I can do this because I've already done it. Think about when you learned to ride a bike. You didn't spend 6 months studying the physics of balance and momentum. You didn't watch hundreds of hours of YouTube tutorials on proper cycling technique. You got on the bike, you wobbled, you fell, you got back up, and eventually you learned. The doing taught you. The action created the clarity. But somewhere between childhood and adulthood, we forgot this fundamental truth. We started believing that we need to have everything figured out before we begin. We started thinking that mistakes are failures rather than feedback. We started valuing the appearance of competence over the reality of growth. And this is costing you everything. The real meaning of karma, when you hear the word karma, what comes to mind? Maybe something mystical. Maybe the idea that what goes around comes around. Maybe some vague concept about the universe keeping score. But the original meaning of karma is far simpler and far more powerful than that. Karma, at its core, means action. It means that what you do shapes what you become, not what you think, not what you intend, not what you plan, what you actually do. This is what I call karma as strategy, using action itself as your primary tool for progress, for clarity, for building the life you actually want to live. Here's what this means in practice. Instead of trying to think your way to the right answer, you act your way there. Instead of waiting for certainty, you create it through experimentation. Instead of planning until you feel ready, you start before you're ready, and let the process teach you. This sounds simple, but it goes against everything your brain wants to do. Your brain wants to simulate. It wants to predict. It wants to plan for every possible scenario so there are no surprises, no failures, no discomfort. And while you're busy doing all that mental work, someone else, someone who might not be as smart or talented or prepared as you, is out there actually doing the thing. And they're learning. They're growing. They're building momentum. Let me give you a real example. Two people want to start a YouTube channel. Person A spends 3 months researching the perfect niche, the perfect equipment, the perfect editing software. They watch tutorials, they read articles, they plan their content calendar. They want everything to be perfect before they upload their first video. Person B records a simple video on their phone, uploads it, and sees what happens. The quality isn't great. The content isn't perfect. But they get feedback. They see what works and what doesn't. They make another video, slightly better, then another. By the time Person A is still planning, Person B has uploaded 20 videos, built an audience, and actually knows from experience what works. Who do you think is further ahead? This is the power of karma as strategy. It's not about being reckless. It's not about abandoning all planning. It's about understanding that action is information. Every time you do something, you learn something you couldn't have learned by just thinking about it. You discover problems you didn't know existed. You find solutions you couldn't have planned for. You build skills that only come from practice. And here's the really important part. Action changes you. Not just your skills, but your identity. Every time you do something, you're sending a signal to your brain about who you are. When you say you're going to do something and then don't, you're teaching yourself that you're the kind of person who doesn't follow through. When you take action, even small action, you're proving to yourself that you're the kind of person who does things. This is why starting is so powerful. Not because that first step is necessarily the right step, but because it begins to shift your identity from thinker to doer. The thinking trap. Let me describe a pattern and see if it sounds familiar. You have an idea. It excites you. You start researching it. You watch videos, read articles, maybe even buy a course. You take notes. You make plans. You feel productive. You feel like you're making progress. But weeks go by, and you haven't actually done anything concrete. You're still in the learning phase, still in the preparation phase, still getting ready to get ready. And the worst part? It feels responsible. It feels smart. After all, shouldn't you be thorough? Shouldn't you learn as much as possible before starting? Isn't that what intelligent people do? No, that's what scared people do. Because here's what's really happening. You're using learning as a form of procrastination. You're using preparation as a way to avoid the discomfort of actually starting. And your brain loves this because it gets to feel productive without taking any real risk. This is what I call the thinking trap. And it's one of the most dangerous patterns you can fall into because it doesn't feel like a problem. It feels like wisdom. It feels like due diligence. It feels like being responsible and careful and smart. But it's none of those things. It's fear dressed up as prudence. Let me ask you something. How much do you actually need to know before you start? If you're honest with yourself, you probably already know enough to take the first step. You might not know enough to finish, but you know enough to begin. And beginning is all that matters right now. Think about it this way. If someone gave you a map to a destination, but you never left your house, would the map be useful? Of course not. The map only becomes valuable when you start moving. The same is true for knowledge. All that information you're gathering is only useful when you apply it. And you can't apply it if you never start. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Perfect information doesn't exist. No matter how much you learn, there will always be things you don't know. There will always be uncertainties. There will always be risks. The question isn't whether you can eliminate these things. You can't. The question is whether you're willing to move forward despite them. And this is where most people get stuck. They think that more information will make them feel ready. But readiness isn't a state you achieve through knowledge. It's a decision you make despite uncertainty. You've been lying to yourself. And the worst part, you don't even realize it. Right now, as you're reading this, there's something in your life you've been putting off. Maybe it's that business idea you've been researching for 6 months. Maybe it's the conversation you need to have but keep avoiding. Maybe it's the skill you know would change everything, but you're waiting for the right time to start learning it. Here's what I need you to understand. That thing you're avoiding, it's not going to get easier tomorrow. The perfect moment you're waiting for, it doesn't exist. And every single day you spend preparing, planning, and overthinking is a day someone else is out there doing the exact thing you're dreaming about. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. When was the last time you actually surprised yourself? When was the last time you did something that made you think, wow, I didn't know I had that in me? If you're struggling to answer that question, it's because you've become too comfortable living in your head. You've mistaken thinking for doing. You've confused planning for progress. And somewhere along the way, you've convinced yourself that preparation is the same thing as action. It's not. I'm going to be brutally honest with you because someone needs to be. You don't have an information problem. You have an execution problem. You're not stuck because you don't know enough. You're stuck because you won't start with what you already know. And deep down, you know this is true. You can feel it every time you close another tab, finish another video, read another article, and then do absolutely nothing with any of it. Think about the last 30 days of your life. How many times did you say, I'm going to do this, and then didn't? How many Monday mornings started with determination and ended with disappointment? How many nights did you go to bed thinking, tomorrow will be different, knowing full well it probably won't be? This isn't about motivation. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are unreliable. This is about something far more fundamental. This is about understanding that your life is not shaped by your intentions. It's not shaped by your knowledge. It's not even shaped by your potential. Your life is shaped by your actions, period. And here's the thing that nobody wants to hear. Every day you're not taking action. You're taking action to stay exactly where you are. Inaction is an action. It's a choice. It's you deciding that comfort is more valuable than growth, that safety is more important than progress, that the fear of failure is scarier than the certainty of regret. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I need to be ready. I need to know more. I need to plan better.
safe, not to push you forward. It sees uncertainty as danger and comfort as safety. So every time you think about doing something new, something challenging, something that might actually change your life, your brain immediately starts generating scenarios. What if you fail? What if people judge you? What if you're not good enough? And these thoughts feel so real, so convincing that you believe them. You mistake possibility for probability. You treat your fears as facts. But here's what I want you to understand. Those thoughts aren't truth. They're just your brain doing what it's wired to do, protect you from discomfort. The problem is, growth lives on the other side of discomfort. Progress requires you to do things that feel uncertain, uncomfortable, and sometimes downright scary. And if you wait until you feel ready, you'll be waiting forever. So let me ask you again, what are you avoiding right now? What's that one thing that keeps coming back to your mind, that keeps nagging at you, that you know you should be doing but aren't? Don't give me the surface answer. Go deeper. What is it really about? Is it fear of failure, fear of success, fear of judgment, fear of realizing you're not who you thought you were? Because here's the hard truth. The thing you're most afraid of doing is probably the exact thing you need to
Do. Your resistance is pointing you toward your growth. And every time you choose comfort over courage, you're reinforcing a pattern that will keep you stuck for years. Now, I'm not here to give you another motivational speech that makes you feel good for 10 minutes and then fades away. I'm here to show you a completely different way of thinking about action, about progress, about how successful people actually operate. And it starts with understanding something that most people get completely backwards. The backwards equation. Most people think the equation for success looks like this: clarity to confidence to action. They believe they need to first get clear on exactly what to do, then build confidence in their ability to do it, and only then take action. So they spend months, sometimes years, trying to get clarity. They research, they plan, they consume content, they wait for some magical moment when everything just clicks and they'll know exactly what to do. But that moment never comes. And you know why? Because clarity doesn't come from thinking. It comes from doing. The real equation looks like this: action leads to clarity, leads to confidence. You take action first, even when it's messy and imperfect. That action gives you feedback. That feedback gives you clarity. And that clarity builds genuine confidence, not the false confidence of, I think I can do this, but the real confidence of, I know I can do this because I've already done it. Think about when you learned to ride a bike. You didn't spend 6 months studying the physics of balance and momentum. You didn't watch hundreds of hours of YouTube tutorials on proper cycling technique. You got on the bike, you wobbled, you fell, you got back up, and eventually you learned. The doing taught you. The action created the clarity. But somewhere between childhood and adulthood, we forgot this fundamental truth. We started believing that we need to have everything figured out before we begin. We started thinking that mistakes are failures rather than feedback. We started valuing the appearance of competence over the reality of growth. And this is costing you everything. The real meaning of karma. When you hear the word karma, what comes to mind? Maybe something mystical. Maybe the idea that what goes around comes around. Maybe some vague concept about the universe keeping score. But the original meaning of karma is far simpler and far more powerful than that. Karma, at its core, means action. It means that what you do shapes what you become, not what you think, not what you intend, not what you plan, what you actually do. This is what I call karma as strategy, using action itself as your primary tool for progress, for clarity, for building the life you actually want to live. Here's what this means in practice. Instead of trying to think your way to the right answer, you act your way there. Instead of waiting for certainty, you create it through experimentation. Instead of planning until you feel ready, you start before you're ready and let the process teach you. This sounds simple, but it goes against everything your brain wants to do. Your brain wants to simulate. It wants to predict. It wants to plan for every possible scenario so there are no surprises, no failures, no discomfort. And while you're busy doing all that mental work, someone else, someone who might not be as smart or talented or prepared as you, is out there actually doing the thing. And they're learning. They're growing. They're building momentum. Let me give you a real example. Two people want to start a YouTube channel. Person A spends 3 months researching the perfect niche, the perfect equipment, the perfect editing software. They watch tutorials, they read articles, they plan their content calendar. They want everything to be perfect before they upload their first video. Person B records a simple video on their phone, uploads it, and sees what happens. The quality isn't great, the content isn't perfect, but they get feedback. They see what works and what doesn't. They make another video slightly better, then another. By the time person A is still planning, person B has uploaded 20 videos, built an audience, and actually knows from experience what works. Who do you think is further ahead? This is the power of karma as strategy. It's not about being reckless. It's not about abandoning all planning. It's about understanding that action is information. Every time you do something, you learn something you couldn't have learned by just thinking about it. You discover problems you didn't know existed. You find solutions you couldn't have planned for. You build skills that only come from practice. And here's the really important part. Action changes you. Not just your skills, but your identity. Every time you do something, you're sending a signal to your brain about who you are. When you say you're going to do something and then don't, you're teaching yourself that you're the kind of person who doesn't follow through. When you take action, even small action, you're proving to yourself that you're the kind of person who does things. This is why starting is so powerful. Not because that first step is necessarily the right step, but because it begins to shift your identity from thinker to doer. The thinking trap. Let me describe a pattern and see if it sounds familiar. You have an idea. It excites you. You start researching it. You watch videos, read articles, maybe even buy a course. You take notes. You make plans. You feel productive. You feel like you're making progress. But weeks go by, and you haven't actually done anything concrete. You're still in the learning phase, still in the preparation phase, still getting ready to get ready. And the worst part? It feels responsible. It feels smart. After all, shouldn't you be thorough? Shouldn't you learn as much as possible before starting? Isn't that what intelligent people do? No, that's what scared people do. Because here's what's really happening. You're using learning as a form of procrastination. You're using preparation as a way to avoid the discomfort of actually starting. And your brain loves this because it gets to feel productive without taking any real risk. This is what I call the thinking trap. And it's one of the most dangerous patterns you can fall into because it doesn't feel like a problem. It feels like wisdom. It feels like due diligence. It feels like being responsible and careful and smart. But it's none of those things. It's fear dressed up as prudence. Let me ask you something. How much do you actually need to know before you start? If you're honest with yourself, you probably already know enough to take the first step. You might not know enough to finish, but you know enough to begin, and beginning is all that matters right now. Think about it this way. If someone gave you a map to a destination, but you never left your house, would the map be useful? Of course not. The map only becomes valuable when you start moving. The same is true for knowledge. All that information you're gathering is only useful when you apply it, and you can't apply it if you never start. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Perfect information doesn't exist. No matter how much you learn, there will always be things you don't know. There will always be uncertainties. There will always be risks. The question isn't whether you can eliminate these things. You can't. The question is whether you're willing to move forward despite them. And this is where most people get stuck. They think that more information will make them feel ready. But readiness isn't a state you achieve through knowledge. It's a decision you make despite uncertainty. Let's talk about the thing you don't want to admit. You know exactly what you need to do. You've known for weeks, maybe months, maybe even years. It's sitting there in the back of your mind, that one thing that would actually move the needle in your life. And yet, somehow, you keep finding reasons not to do it. Not good reasons, not logical reasons, just reasons. I'll do it tomorrow when I have more energy. I'll start on Monday when I can really commit. I need to finish this other thing first. Now's not the right time. I'm too busy right now. I don't have everything I need yet. Sound familiar? Here's what I need you to understand. These aren't reasons. They're symptoms. Symptoms of something far deeper than simple laziness or poor time management. You're not procrastinating because you're lazy. You're procrastinating because you're human. And your humanity comes with a brain that's designed to avoid discomfort at all costs. The anatomy of avoidance. Let me walk you through what's actually happening in your head when you procrastinate. You think about doing the thing immediately, and I mean within milliseconds. Your brain starts running simulations. It imagines all the ways this could go wrong, all the effort it will require, all the discomfort you'll feel, all the uncertainty you'll face. And then, like a good friend trying to protect you, your brain offers you an alternative, something easier, something more comfortable, something that gives you immediate relief from that uncomfortable feeling. Check your phone, watch a video, organize your desk, make another cup of coffee. Suddenly, you're doing something, anything, other than the thing you actually need to do. And here's the kicker. It feels justified. It feels productive. It feels like you're being responsible by taking a break, or clearing your head, or getting organized first. But you're not. You're running away from discomfort, and your brain is helping you rationalize it. This is the trap that catches everyone. We think procrastination is about the task. We think we're avoiding the work. But that's not what's happening. We're avoiding the feeling that comes with the work, the anxiety, the uncertainty, the fear of not being good enough, the discomfort of not knowing exactly how things will turn out. And here's where it gets really insidious. The more important the task, the stronger the discomfort. The bigger the potential impact on your life, the more your brain wants to protect you from it. So the very things that could transform your life are the exact things you're most likely to avoid. Think about that for a second. The tasks that matter most are the ones you're most likely to postpone. Not because you don't care about them, but because you care too much. Because deep down, you know that doing them means facing the possibility of failure, judgment, or discovering that you're not who you thought you were. The emotional equation. Here's something most people don't realize. Procrastination is not a time management problem, it's an emotion management problem. You don't procrastinate because you're bad at managing your schedule. You procrastinate because you're trying to manage your feelings. You're trying to avoid anxiety, boredom, frustration, fear, or overwhelm. And the quickest way to avoid those feelings is to avoid the task that triggers them. Let me give you a concrete example. You need to have a difficult conversation with someone. Maybe it's confronting a colleague about something they did. Maybe it's asking for a raise. Maybe it's setting a boundary with a family member. You know you need to do it. You've known for weeks. But every time you think about it, you feel a knot in your stomach. You imagine the awkwardness, the potential conflict, the possibility of rejection. And that feeling is so uncomfortable that you decide, I'll do it tomorrow when I'm feeling more confident. But tomorrow comes, and you still feel uncomfortable because the feeling isn't going to go away. The only way through it is through it. This is the fundamental misunderstanding that keeps people stuck. We think we need to feel ready before we act. We think we need to feel confident before we start. We think we need to feel motivated before we move forward. But feelings don't work that way. You don't get confident and then take action. You take action, and then confidence follows. You don't get motivated and then start. You start, and then motivation shows up. Yet we keep waiting, waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel certain, waiting to feel like doing it. And while we're waiting, life is passing us by. The guilt cycle. Now let me describe a pattern that's probably painfully familiar. You wake up with good intentions. Today's going to be different. Today, you're actually going to do the thing. You feel determined. You feel motivated. You feel ready. But then the day starts. Other things come up. Small tasks that need attention. Emails that need responses. Distractions that seem important in the moment. And somehow, the hours slip by without you touching the thing you said you'd do. Evening comes. You realize you didn't do it again. And now the guilt sets in. That heavy, sinking feeling. Why am I like this? Why can't I just do what I say I'm going to do? What's wrong with me? You promise yourself again that tomorrow will be different. You set your intention. You make your plan. You go to bed determined. And then tomorrow comes, and the cycle repeats, day after day, week after week, month after month. Each cycle adding another layer of guilt, another dent in your self-image, another piece of evidence that you're not the person you want to be. This is what I call the guilt cycle. and it's absolutely devastating. Not because you're not doing the task. Tasks can always be done later. But because every cycle is teaching you something toxic about yourself. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you're eroding your self-trust. Every time you choose comfort over commitment, you're reinforcing a neural pathway that makes the next choice even harder. And the worst part, the guilt doesn't help. It doesn't motivate you. It doesn't make you more likely to follow through next time. All it does is make you feel terrible, which makes you want to avoid the task even more because now it's associated not just with discomfort, but with shame. So you end up in this vicious cycle. Procrastinate, feel guilty, promise to change, procrastinate again, feel more guilty, and on and on. And with each cycle, your self-image gets a little bit worse. You start to believe that you're lazy, that you lack discipline, that you're not capable of following through. But none of that is true. You're not lazy. You're not weak. You're just stuck in a pattern that you don't know how to break. The perfectionism trap, let me show you another layer of this. A lot of procrastination isn't about avoiding work. It's about avoiding imperfect work. We don't start because we can't do it perfectly. We don't share because it's not quite ready. We don't launch because it could be better. We tell ourselves we're being thorough, being professional, having standards. But really, we're being afraid. Afraid that if we put something imperfect out into the world, it will reflect badly on us. Afraid that people will judge us. Afraid that we'll judge ourselves. So we keep tweaking, keep improving, keep almost readying our way through life. And nothing ever gets finished. Nothing ever gets shared. Nothing ever makes an impact. Here's what you need to understand. Perfectionism isn't about high standards. It's about fear of judgment. And the way it manifests is procrastination. Because if you never finish, you never have to face the possibility of criticism or failure. Think about it. If you never launch your business, you never have to face the possibility of it failing. If you never submit your work, you never have to face rejection. If you never have that difficult conversation, you never have to deal with conflict. Perfectionism lets you maintain the fantasy that you could do something amazing if you wanted to. It protects your ego by keeping everything in the realm of potential rather than reality. But here's the cost. You never actually accomplish anything. You never actually grow. You never actually prove to yourself what you're capable of. You just live in this perpetual state of someday, where everything is possible, but nothing is actual. The size distortion. Here's another fascinating thing that happens when you procrastinate. You make the task bigger than it is. In your mind, that email you need to write becomes this massive, overwhelming thing. That phone call becomes a huge ordeal. That conversation becomes an epic confrontation. That project becomes an insurmountable mountain. But here's what's interesting. Once you actually start doing it, you usually discover it's not nearly as big or as difficult as you imagined. That email takes 10 minutes. That phone call is done in 5. That conversation, while uncomfortable, lasts 20 minutes. That project, once you break it down, is just a series of manageable steps. The anticipation was worse than the reality. This is because your brain doesn't just think about the task, it amplifies the emotional weight of it. It takes a simple action and loads it with meaning, anxiety, and imagined consequences. And then you're not just facing the task itself, you're facing this mountain of emotional baggage that you've attached to it. So, of course, you avoid it. Who wouldn't avoid a mountain? But here's the key insight. The mountain is an illusion. It's a construction of your mind. The actual task is usually just a hill, sometimes just a speed bump. But you've convinced yourself it's Everest. This is why one of the most powerful anti-procrastination techniques is to make the task laughably small. Not just small, laughably small. So small that your brain can't justify avoiding it. Don't work on the project. Just open the document. Don't go to the gym. Just put on your workout clothes. Don't write the article. Just write one sentence. Make it so ridiculously small that the resistance dissolves. Because once you start, even with the smallest action, momentum takes over. And you often find yourself doing more than you planned because the hardest part was starting, not continuing. The short-term bias. Now, let me show you why your brain keeps choosing procrastination even though you know it's hurting you. Your brain is wired for short-term survival, not long-term success. It's designed to seek immediate rewards and avoid immediate threats. So when you're faced with a choice between doing something difficult that will pay off later and doing something easy that feels good now, your brain has a built-in bias toward the easy thing. This is why you scroll through social media instead of working on your project. This is why you watch another episode instead of going to bed at a reasonable hour. This is why you eat the junk food instead of preparing a healthy meal. Not because you're weak, not because you lack willpower, but because your brain is doing exactly what it's designed to do. Maximize pleasure in the moment and minimize discomfort in the moment. The problem is, meaningful things require you to choose long-term gain over short-term comfort. They require you to do things that don't feel good now but will create value later. They require you to tolerate discomfort in the present for the sake of your future self. And this is a battle you're fighting against millions of years of evolution. Your brain didn't evolve to help you write a book or build a business or have difficult conversations. It evolved to keep you alive in an environment where immediate threats mattered and long-term planning wasn't relevant. So every time you choose the difficult thing over the easy thing, you're going against your brain's natural wiring. You're choosing to be uncomfortable now for the sake of being better later, and that requires conscious effort. The environment factor. Here's something else that makes procrastination worse. Your environment is probably working against you. Think about your typical day. How many distractions are within arm's reach? Your phone, your computer, your TV, your fridge, social media, email, messages, news, entertainment, all of it designed to capture your attention and give you immediate little hits of dopamine. Your environment is optimized for distraction, not for focus. And every time you try to do something difficult, you're surrounded by easier alternatives that are literally designed to be more appealing than whatever you're trying to do. This is why willpower alone isn't enough. You're not just fighting your own brain. You're fighting an entire ecosystem of distraction that's been engineered to capture and hold your attention. So what do? You design your environment to support your goals instead of undermining them. You remove distractions. You create friction between you and the easy things. You make the difficult things easier to start. You set up your space so that the default action is the productive action, not the distracting one. This isn't about having more discipline. This is about being smarter than your environment. Because no amount of willpower can consistently overcome a poorly designed environment. The real solution. So, if procrastination is about emotion management, if it's about your brain's wiring, if it's about your environment, what's the actual solution? It starts with honesty. Radical honesty about why you're really avoiding the thing. Stop telling yourself you're too busy. Stop telling yourself you'll do it later. Stop pretending you need more information or more time or more resources. Get honest about the real reason. You're uncomfortable. The task makes you anxious. It makes you uncertain. It threatens your ego. It requires effort. It might lead to failure, and you're avoiding it because you're trying to avoid those feelings. Once you admit that, everything changes, because now you're not dealing with a time management problem. You're dealing with an emotional challenge, and emotional challenges require different solutions than logistical ones. The solution isn't better planning. It's building your tolerance for discomfort. It's learning to act even when you don't feel like it. It's developing the ability to start despite anxiety, to continue despite frustration, to persist despite uncertainty. And how do you build that tolerance? The same way you build any muscle, through repeated exposure. You practice doing things when you don't feel like it. You practice starting before you're ready. You practice taking action despite discomfort. And each time you do, you're teaching your brain that discomfort isn't dangerous. You're proving to yourself that you can handle it. This is why starting small is so crucial. You're not trying to become a completely different person overnight. You're just trying to prove to yourself, in a small way, that you can do hard things, that you can choose action over avoidance, that you can feel uncomfortable and do the thing anyway. The identity shift, and this brings us back to identity, because the real battle with procrastination isn't about tasks. It's about who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who procrastinates, someone who lacks discipline, someone who can't follow through, then that's who you'll be. Your actions will align with your identity. But if you start to see yourself differently, as someone who takes action, someone who does hard things, someone who follows through even when it's uncomfortable, then your actions will shift to match that identity. And how do you shift your identity? Through action, through proving to yourself one small decision at a time that you're not who you thought you were. You don't need to make massive changes. You don't need to become a completely different person. You just need to start acting like the person you want to become. And every small action is a vote for that new identity. Didn't feel like working out, but did it anyway? That's a vote for, I'm someone who exercises even when it's hard. Didn't want to have that difficult conversation, but had it anyway? That's a vote for, I'm someone who faces discomfort instead of avoiding it. Didn't feel inspired to work on your project, but showed up anyway? That's a vote for, I'm someone who shows up regardless of how I feel. Accumulate enough votes, and your identity shifts. And when your identity shifts, procrastination loses its grip on you, because you're not someone who procrastinates anymore. You're someone who does things. The moment of truth. So here's where we are. You now understand that procrastination isn't about laziness. It's about emotion. It's about your brain trying to protect you from discomfort. It's about environments designed to distract you. It's about identities that don't serve you, and you have a choice. You can keep doing what you've been doing. Keep telling yourself you'll start tomorrow. Keep waiting for the perfect moment. Keep choosing comfort over growth, and you'll keep getting the same results you've been getting. Or you can decide that today is different, not because you feel ready, not because you're suddenly more disciplined, but because you're finally willing to do the thing even though you don't feel like it. What's the one thing you've been avoiding? You know what it is. It's been sitting in the back of your mind this entire time. What would happen if you just did it? Not perfectly, not completely. Just started. Just took one small step toward it. What would that prove to yourself? What would that say about who you are? Because here's the truth. You're not going to feel like doing it. You're probably never going to feel like doing it. Waiting for the feeling is what's kept you stuck. The breakthrough happens when you realize you don't need to feel like it. You just need to do it anyway. And that's a skill you can build. That's a muscle you can strengthen. That's an identity you can create. One uncomfortable action at a time. Understanding why you procrastinate is valuable, but understanding alone doesn't change anything. You can know every psychological mechanism behind why you avoid things and still keep avoiding them. Knowledge without application is just entertainment. So now we're going to talk about something different. Not why you're stuck, but how to get unstuck. Not the theory of action, but the actual system that forces you to take action whether you feel like it or not. This is what I call the Action First System, a complete reorientation of how you approach every task, every goal, every challenge in your life. And it starts with accepting a truth that might make you uncomfortable. Your brain is never going to naturally push you toward difficult things. Ever. Your brain wants easy. Your brain wants safe. Your brain wants comfortable. And if you leave your actions up to how you feel, you'll always default to the path of least resistance. So, we're not going to rely on feelings. We're going to design a system that works regardless of how you feel. The fundamental flip. Let me show you the single most important shift you need to make. Right now, your process probably looks something like this. Think, plan, prepare, feel ready, act. You think about what you need to do. You plan how you're going to do it. You prepare everything you need. You wait until you feel ready. And then, maybe, you act. The problem? You rarely make it to the action part. You get stuck in the thinking, planning, preparing loop. And even when you do act, it's with so much built-up pressure and expectation that it feels overwhelming. The Action First system flips this completely. Act to learn to adjust to act again. You start by taking the smallest possible action. That action teaches you something. You use what you learned to adjust your approach. Then you act again, slightly better informed than before. Notice what's missing: the lengthy thinking phase, the extensive planning, the waiting to feel ready. All of that gets compressed or eliminated entirely because you don't need it. You learn faster by doing than by thinking. Let me give you a real example. Say you want to start a podcast. The traditional approach: spend weeks researching microphones, learning about audio editing software, studying successful podcasters, planning your content strategy, designing your brand, building your website, and preparing your first 10 episodes before you launch. The Action First approach. Use your phone. Record a 5-minute episode about something you find interesting. Upload it to a free hosting platform. Put it out there. See what happens. Get feedback. Record another one, slightly better. Repeat. Which approach do you think gets you to episode 50 faster? Which one actually teaches you what works? Which one builds real skills instead of theoretical knowledge? The second one, every single time. But here's why most people don't do it. It requires you to be okay with being bad at something. It requires you to put out imperfect work. It requires you to learn in public instead of in private. And that's uncomfortable, which is exactly why it works. Because discomfort is where growth lives. The 5-second rule. Here's a technique that sounds almost too simple to work, but I promise you it's devastatingly effective. When you know you need to do something, you have 5 seconds to start moving toward it. Not 5 minutes, not 5 hours. 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Move. Why does this work? Because your brain needs time to generate reasons not to do something. It needs time to build up that mountain of resistance, to create all those convincing arguments about why now isn't the right time. But if you move within 5 seconds, you interrupt that process. You don't give your brain enough time to talk you out of it. You bypass the overthinking and go straight to action. This doesn't mean you have to complete the entire task in 5 seconds. It means you have to make a physical move toward starting it within 5 seconds of thinking about it. Need to write. Move toward your computer. Need to exercise. Stand up and move toward your workout space. Need to make that phone call. Pick up your phone and start dialing. The movement itself changes your state. It shifts you from thinking mode to doing mode. And once you're in motion, continuing is far easier than starting was. Try it right now. Think of something you've been avoiding. Then count. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and move. See what happened? For a brief moment, you bypassed all the mental resistance. You didn't give yourself time to generate excuses. You just moved. That's the power of the 5-second rule. It's not about motivation, it's about momentum. And momentum is infinitely more reliable than motivation. The minimum viable action. Now let's talk about how to make starting so easy that you can't justify not doing it. This is where most people mess up. They set the bar too high. They think, I'm going to work out for an hour. And then when they don't feel like working out for an hour, they don't work out at all. The action first system says, make the action so small that it's harder to avoid than to do. Not, I'm going to work out for an hour. Just, I'm going to put on my workout clothes. Not, I'm going to write 1,000 words. Just, I'm going to write 1 sentence. Not, I'm going to study for 2 hours. Just, I'm going to open my textbook. Make it laughably small. Make it so small that your brain can't generate a convincing excuse to avoid it. Here's what happens. Once you put on your workout clothes, you're probably going to work out at least a little bit. Once you've written 1 sentence, you're probably going to write a few more. Once you've opened your textbook, you're probably going to read at least 1 page. Because the hardest part is starting. Once you're in motion, continuing takes far less energy than starting did. But even if you don't continue, even if you just do that 1 tiny action and stop, you've still won. Because you've proven to yourself that you can do the thing. You've built evidence that you're someone who follows through. You've created momentum, and that's worth more than any amount of planning or preparation. This is what I call the minimum viable action, the smallest possible step you can take that still counts as progress. And the beauty of it is that it removes almost all resistance. It makes saying no harder than saying yes. Structure over motivation. Let me tell you something you probably don't want to hear. Motivation is garbage. I don't mean it's not real. I don't mean it doesn't feel good. I mean it's completely unreliable as a driver of consistent action. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings fluctuate. Some days you wake up fired up, ready to conquer the world. Other days you wake up feeling flat, unmotivated, just wanting to stay in bed. If you rely on motivation to drive your actions, you'll only take action on the good days. And the good days are rare. Most days are just days. Normal days where you don't feel particularly motivated or unmotivated, you just feel neutral. And on those neutral days, if you're waiting for motivation, you do nothing. This is why motivation-based approaches to productivity always fail. They work great for a week or two and you're all fired up. Then real life happens. The excitement fades, motivation wanes, and you're back to square one. The action-first system doesn't rely on motivation. It relies on structure. Structure means you have predetermined times, predetermined places, and predetermined actions. You don't make decisions based on how you feel. You make decisions based on what you've committed to doing. For example, every weekday at 6 a.m., I write for 30 minutes at my desk before checking email or social media. That's a structure. Notice what's missing? There's no if I feel like it. There's no when I'm motivated. There's no decision-making in the moment. It's just, this is what happens at this time, in this place. When you have structure, you remove the need for motivation. You don't have to feel like doing it. You just do it because that's what you do at that time. It becomes automatic, like brushing your teeth or making coffee. And here's what's fascinating. Once you start taking action regularly through structure, motivation often shows up. Not before the action, after it. Because action creates momentum, and momentum generates its own energy. So stop waiting to feel motivated. Build structure instead. Decide when, where, and how you'll take action. Then follow that structure regardless of how you feel. The feedback integration. Now, here's where the action-first system gets really powerful. You're not just taking action blindly. You're using each action as an experiment that teaches you something. Every action generates feedback. The question is, are you paying attention to it? Most people take action and then immediately judge it as either success or failure. But that's not useful feedback. That's just emotional reaction. Real feedback looks like this. What worked? What didn't? What surprised me? What would I do differently next time? This is how you get better fast. You're not trying to get it perfect on the first try. You're trying to learn from each attempt so the next one is slightly better. This requires a mental shift. You have to stop seeing actions as pass/fail and start seeing them as experiments. You're gathering data. You're testing hypotheses. You're learning what works in the real world, not what you think should work in theory. Let's say you're trying to build an audience on social media. Most people post something, see it doesn't get much engagement, and either give up or keep doing the same thing, hoping for different results. The action-first approach. Post something. Analyze what happened. Did certain topics get more engagement than others? Did certain formats work better? Did posts at certain times do better? Use that information to adjust your next post. Test again. Learn more. Adjust again. After 20 posts using this approach, you know far more about what actually works than someone who spent months planning the perfect content strategy. This is the power of feedback integration. You're not just acting, you're learning from every action and using that learning to inform the next action. But this only works if you're actually paying attention. If you're taking action and then immediately moving on without reflection, you're wasting the learning opportunity. So build in a simple review process. After you take action, ask yourself, what did I learn? What will I do differently next time? It doesn't have to be elaborate, just conscious. The 2-day rule. Let's talk about consistency, because taking action once is easy. Taking action consistently is where most people fall apart. You start strong, you're motivated, you do the thing for a few days, maybe a week, then you miss a day. Maybe you had a legitimate reason. Maybe you were tired. Maybe life got in the way. And then you miss another day, and another. And suddenly you haven't done it in a week, and all that momentum is gone. This is where the 2-day rule comes in. Never miss twice. Miss once? Fine. Life happens. You were sick. You had an emergency. You just had a bad day. That's okay. But the next day, no matter what, you show up. Even if it's just for 5 minutes. Even if it's the absolute minimum, you show up. Because here's what happens when you miss twice in a row. Your brain starts to see not doing the thing as the new pattern. The exception becomes the rule. And once that happens, getting back on track is exponentially harder. But if you follow the 2-day rule, if you make sure that you never miss 2 days in a row, you maintain momentum. You keep the pattern alive. You prove to yourself that you're still the person who does this thing. And over time, that consistency compounds into something remarkable. Think about it this way. Would you rather work out intensely for a week, then quit? Or would you rather work out for 10 minutes every single day for a year? Which one do you think creates more transformation? The second one, obviously, because consistency beats intensity every single time. The 2-day rule helps you maintain that consistency even when life gets messy. It gives you permission to not be perfect while still maintaining the pattern that matters. The identity anchor. Now we're getting to the deepest level of the action-first system, using action to reshape your identity. Here's how most people think about change. I want to become a writer, so I need to start writing. But that's backwards. The truth is, you become a writer by writing. The identity follows the action, not the other way around. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Write for 10 minutes? That's a vote for I'm a writer. Go to the gym? That's a vote for I'm someone who exercises. Have that difficult conversation? That's a vote for I'm someone who faces challenges. And when you accumulate enough votes, you don't have to convince yourself anymore. You don't have to fake it. The identity becomes real. You are that person. This is why small, consistent actions are so powerful. It's not just about the results they produce, though those matter. It's about who they turn you into. Every time you show up, every time you do the thing, even when you don't feel like it, every time you choose action over avoidance, you're reinforcing the identity of someone who takes action. And that identity becomes self-reinforcing. Eventually, You don't have to fight yourself to take action. It's just who you are. It's just what you do. But this only happens if you're conscious about it. If you're just going through the motions without connecting your actions to your identity, you miss the transformational power. So when you take action, remind yourself what it means. I'm doing this because I'm the kind of person who follows through. I'm showing up because I'm someone who honors commitments to myself. I'm taking this step because I'm building the identity of a person who does hard things. Make the connection explicit. Turn actions into evidence of who you're becoming. The anti-perfection protocol. Let me address something that probably stops you more than you realize. Perfectionism disguised as standards. You tell yourself you have high standards. You tell yourself you want to do things right. You tell yourself it's better to wait until you can do it properly than to do it poorly. But here's the truth. That's fear talking, not standards. Real standards mean you care about doing good work. Perfectionism means you're so afraid of doing bad work that you don't do any work at all. The Action First system has a built-in anti-perfectionism protocol. Done is better than perfect. Published is better than polished. Real is better than ideal. This doesn't mean you don't care about quality. It means you understand that quality comes from repetition, not from endless preparation. You get good by doing a thing badly at first and gradually improving. Think about any skill you're good at now. Were you good at it the first time you tried? Of course not. You were terrible. But you did it anyway, and through repetition, you got better. The same principle applies to everything. You don't get good at writing by thinking about writing. You get good by writing badly at first and gradually improving. You don't build a successful business by planning endlessly. You start a messy business and refine it through real-world feedback. So the protocol is simple. Set a deadline. When the deadline hits, you ship. Whatever state it's in, you ship. It might not be perfect. It might not even be good, but it's done. It's real. It's out in the world. And that's infinitely more valuable than the perfect thing that never leaves your head. The system in practice. Okay, let's bring this all together into a practical system you can actually use. Step 1. Choose one specific action you're going to take. Not a goal, not a project. One specific action. Make it small enough that you can do it in less than 30 minutes. Step 2. Decide exactly when and where you're going to do it. Not sometime this week, not when I have time, exactly when. Put it on your calendar like an appointment you can't miss. Step 3. Remove all friction. Set up your environment so that when the time comes, you can start immediately. No decisions to make, no barriers to overcome. Everything ready to go. Step 4. When the time comes, use the 5-second rule. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Move. Don't think. Don't negotiate. Just start. Step 5. Do the minimum viable action. Remember, you only committed to starting. If you only do 5 minutes, that's fine. But start. Step 6. After you're done, ask yourself, what did I learn? What will I do differently next time? Write it down if it helps. Step 7. Schedule the next action immediately. Don't wait. Put it on your calendar right now. Step 8. Follow the 2-day rule. If you miss once, make absolutely sure you don't miss twice. That's it. That's the system. It's not complicated. It's not revolutionary. It's just a structured way of forcing yourself to take action instead of overthinking. But here's the thing. Simple doesn't mean easy. This system requires you to do something that feels unnatural. Act before you feel ready. Start before it's perfect. Move before you have all the answers. And that's uncomfortable. Your brain will resist. It will give you reasons to wait, to plan more, to prepare better. That's normal. The question is, are you going to listen to that resistance, or are you going to act anyway? The daily practice. Let me give you one final piece to make this system sustainable. The daily practice. Every single day, you're going to do one thing that makes you slightly uncomfortable. Not terrifying, not overwhelming, just slightly uncomfortable. Maybe it's sending that email you've been avoiding. Maybe it's making that phone call. Maybe it's working on that project for 10 minutes. Maybe it's having that conversation. The specific action doesn't matter as much as the practice of doing something uncomfortable every day. Because here's what this does. It trains your brain that discomfort isn't dangerous. It builds your tolerance for uncertainty. It proves to yourself that you can handle hard things. And over time, your comfort zone expands. Things that used to feel impossible start to feel manageable. Actions you used to avoid become routine. This is how transformation happens. Not through massive overnight changes, but through small daily practices that compound over time. So every morning, ask yourself, what's one uncomfortable thing I'm going to do today? Then do it before you do anything else. Before you check email. Before you scroll social media. Before you get caught up in the day's demands. Make it your first priority. Because if you do that one uncomfortable thing first, everything else feels easier by comparison. The commitment. So here we are. You now have a complete system. You understand the fundamental flip from thinking first to action first. You have specific techniques. You have a practical framework. The only question left is, will you actually use it? Because I can give you the best system in the world, but it's worthless if you don't implement it. So I want you to make a commitment right now. Not to me, to yourself. Pick one action you're going to take in the next 24 hours. One specific thing that you've been avoiding. Use the system we just talked about. Make it small. Schedule it. Remove friction. Use the 5-second rule. Just do it. And then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Not because it's easy, not because you feel like it, but because you've decided that you're the kind of person who does things. That's the commitment. And if you honor that commitment, if you show up and take action even on the days when you don't feel like it, everything changes. Not overnight, not dramatically, but gradually, steadily, inevitably. Because action compounds. Small actions, repeated consistently, create remarkable results. And the Action First system is how you make that happen. There's a secret that separates the people who actually achieve their goals from the people who just dream about them. And it has nothing to do with talent, intelligence, or resources. It's momentum. You've experienced this before, even if you didn't have a name for it. Think about a time when everything seemed to be flowing, when you were on a roll, when work felt effortless, when ideas came easily, when progress felt inevitable. That was momentum. Now think about a time when everything felt hard, when you couldn't get yourself to do anything, when even simple tasks felt overwhelming, when you were stuck in a rut and couldn't figure out how to climb out. That was the absence of momentum. Here's what most people don't understand. Momentum isn't something that happens to you. It's something you build. And once you understand how it works, you can create it intentionally instead of waiting for it to magically appear. This is the game that successful people are playing that everyone else isn't even aware exists. They're not hoping for momentum. They're engineering it. They're building it deliberately through specific actions that compound over time. And once you learn to play this game, everything becomes easier. The physics of progress. Let me explain momentum through a simple metaphor that makes the mechanics crystal clear. Imagine you're trying to push a massive boulder up a hill. At the beginning, it's incredibly hard. You're pushing with everything you've got, and the boulder barely moves. Every inch of progress requires enormous effort. You're sweating, straining, exhausted. This is what starting feels like. This is why beginning anything new is so damn hard. Because you're working against inertia. You're trying to move something that's at rest. And physics tells us that requires maximum force. But here's what happens if you keep pushing. The boulder starts to move. Slowly at first. Barely perceptible, but it's moving. And the more it moves, the easier it becomes to keep it moving. Eventually, you reach a point where the boulder has its own momentum. You're still pushing, but now you're maintaining movement rather than creating it. The effort required drops dramatically. What used to feel impossible now feels manageable. And if you keep going long enough, you might even reach a point where the boulder is rolling on its own, and your job is just to guide it rather than push it. This is exactly how momentum works in your life. Starting a new habit feels like pushing that boulder from a standstill. Going to the gym for the first time in months is brutal. Writing when you haven't written in weeks is agonizing. Making that first sales call when you're building a business feels terrifying. But if you keep showing up, if you keep pushing even when it's hard, something shifts. It gets easier, not because the activity changed, but because you've built momentum. The gym becomes routine. Writing becomes natural. Making calls becomes normal. And once you have that momentum, maintaining it is exponentially easier than building it was. The momentum equation. Now let me show you the exact formula for building momentum so you can apply it systematically. Momentum equals consistency times time times small wins. Let's break that down. Consistency is the most important variable. This means showing up repeatedly, even when you don't feel like it, even when it's hard, even when you don't see immediate results. Consistency is non-negotiable for building momentum. One amazing workout doesn't create momentum. 10 mediocre workouts spread over 2 weeks do. One brilliant day of work doesn't create momentum. Showing up for an hour every day for a month does. This is why the Action First system focuses so much on making action small and structured. Because consistency only happens when the action is manageable enough that you can do it regardless of circumstances. Time is the multiplier. The longer you maintain consistency, the more powerful the momentum becomes. This is why you can't judge your progress after 3 days, or even 3 weeks. You need to think in terms of months. That's because momentum compounds over time. Think about compound interest. $1 today doesn't look like much, but $1 invested every day for years becomes substantial. Momentum works the same way. Small actions don't look impressive in the moment, but small actions repeated over time create transformation. Small wins are the fuel. Every time you complete an action, no matter how small, your brain registers it as a win. That win releases dopamine. That dopamine makes you more likely to take action again, which creates another win, which releases more dopamine. And the cycle reinforces itself. This is why celebrating small wins is crucial. Not because you're being soft on yourself, but because you're hacking your brain's reward system to support your momentum instead of undermining it. When you put all three together, showing up consistently over time while acknowledging small wins, you create unstoppable momentum. The streak mentality. Let me introduce you to one of the most powerful psychological tools for building momentum, the streak. A streak is simply a count of consecutive days you've done something. Day 1, day 2, day 3, and so on. Sounds simple, right? Almost trivial. But there's something magical about streaks that makes them incredibly effective for building momentum. Once you have a streak going, you don't want to break it. You've invested all this time building it. You've proven to yourself that you can do it. And breaking the streak feels like throwing all that away. So on days when you don't feel like showing up, the streak pulls you forward. I've done this for 47 days straight. I'm not breaking the streak today. This is why so many successful people track streaks. Jerry Seinfeld famously used the don't break the chain method for writing jokes every day. He'd mark an X on a calendar for every day he wrote. His only job was to not break the chain of X's. Simple? Yes. Effective? Incredibly. Because the streak becomes its own source of motivation. You're not just doing the thing because you want the long-term outcome. You're doing it because you don't want to break the streak. And that's often enough to get you through the hard days. Now, here's an important caveat. Streaks should serve you, not enslave you. If you get sick or have a genuine emergency and need to break the streak, that's okay. The point isn't to be rigid. The point is to use the psychological power of streaks to maintain consistency. But, and this is crucial, you should have a very high bar for what counts as a legitimate reason to break a streak. I don't feel like it doesn't count. I'm tired doesn't count. I'm busy doesn't count. Only genuine, unavoidable circumstances should break your streak. Everything else, you push through. The momentum multipliers. Now let me show you specific techniques that accelerate momentum once you've started building it. Multiplier 1. Stack your habits. This is where you attach a new habit to an existing one. The existing habit has momentum. By connecting your new habit to it, you borrow that momentum. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will write for 10 minutes. The coffee is already part of your routine. It has momentum. By stacking the writing habit onto it, you make it much more likely to stick. This works because you're not creating a brand new pattern from scratch. You're extending an existing pattern. And that's far easier than starting from zero. Multiplier 2. Public accountability. When you make your commitment public, you add social pressure to your internal motivation. You tell people you're going to do something. Now you have external accountability in addition to your internal commitment. This can be as simple as posting on social media. Starting today, I'm writing every day for 30 days. Or telling a friend, I'm going to the gym every morning this week. Check in with me. The fear of looking like someone who doesn't follow through becomes an additional force keeping you on track. It's not the highest form of motivation, But when internal motivation is low, external accountability can bridge the gap. Multiplier 3, environment design. Your environment either supports your momentum or undermines it. If you have to overcome obstacles every time you want to take action, your momentum will stall. So you design your environment to make the action easier than avoiding it. Want to exercise in the morning? Put your workout clothes next to your bed so they're the first thing you see. Want to read more? Put a book on your pillow so you have to move it before you can sleep. Want to eat healthier? Put healthy snacks at eye level and junk food where you can't see it. Small environmental changes create big behavioral shifts because they work with your psychology instead of against it. Multiplier 4, the 2% rule. This is about making tiny improvements rather than massive leaps. You're not trying to double your output. You're trying to be 2% better than yesterday. Write for 12 minutes instead of 10. Do 11 push-ups instead of 10. Read 6 pages instead of 5. These improvements are so small they seem almost meaningless. But here's the math. If you improve by 2% every day, you're 1,300% better in a year. That's not a typo. That's the power of compound growth. And small improvements are sustainable. You're not burning yourself out trying to make massive changes. You're building momentum through incremental progress that compounds over time. The momentum killers. Now let's talk about what destroys momentum, because knowing what to avoid is just as important as knowing what to do. Killer 1, the all-or-nothing trap. This is when you think that if you can't do the full version of the action, you shouldn't do anything at all. I can't work out for an hour today, so I won't work out at all. I can't write my full 1,000 words, so I won't write. I can't do the whole morning routine, so I'll skip it. This is a momentum killer because it breaks your consistency. And consistency is the foundation of momentum. The antidote? Do something. Even if it's a tiny fraction of what you planned. 10 minutes is better than 0 minutes. 100 words is better than 0 words. 2 parts of your routine are better than 0 parts. Perfection is the enemy of momentum. Done is better than perfect. Some is better than none. Killer 2, waiting for motivation. We've talked about this before, but it's worth repeating because it's so destructive to momentum. You cannot rely on motivation. Motivation fluctuates. Some days you have it, some days you don't. If you only take action when you're motivated, you'll have a sporadic, inconsistent pattern that never builds real momentum. Momentum comes from showing up regardless of how you feel. On the motivated days and the unmotivated days, on the good days and the bad days, on the days when it's easy and the days when it's hard. That's what separates people who build lasting momentum from people who go in cycles of starting and stopping. Killer 3, comparison. When you compare your progress to someone else's, you're often comparing your beginning to their middle or end. You see where they are now and feel discouraged about where you are. But you don't see the years of work they put in to get there. You don't see their struggles, their setbacks, their moments of doubt. You just see the end result and feel like you'll never get there. This kills momentum because it makes you feel like your efforts don't matter, like you're so far behind that there's no point in continuing. The antidote? Compare yourself only to your past self. Are you further along than you were last week, last month, last year? That's the only comparison that matters. Killer 4. Breaking the pattern. Remember the 2-day rule from the Action First system? This is why it matters for momentum. Missing 1 day is okay. Life happens. But missing 2 days in a row breaks the pattern. Your brain starts to see not doing the thing as normal. The exception becomes the rule. And once that happens, momentum dies. So you protect the pattern fiercely. You make sure that even if you miss once, you absolutely don't miss twice. Because maintaining the pattern is what keeps momentum alive. The momentum shift. Now let me describe something you'll experience once you've built real momentum, because understanding this will help you push through until you get there. At first, action requires willpower. You have to force yourself. You have to use discipline. You have to push through resistance. It's hard. Every single time. But once you have momentum, something shifts. Action starts to feel natural. You don't have to force yourself anymore. You don't have to use massive amounts of willpower. The action has become part of who you are. This is the momentum shift, the point where the thing that used to require enormous effort becomes relatively effortless. Not because the activity changed, but because you've built enough momentum that it carries you forward. It's like the difference between pedaling a bike uphill and coasting downhill. Same bike, same you, completely different experience. But here's the catch. You have to push through the uphill part to get to the coasting part. And most people quit during the uphill phase because it's hard and they don't see the shift coming. They think it's always going to be this hard. They think they're always going to have to fight themselves to take action, so they give up. But if you understand that the shift is coming, that there's a point where momentum takes over and things get easier, you're more likely to persist until you reach it. How long does it take? It varies. Some people feel the shift after a week, some after a month, some after 3 months. It depends on the activity, your starting point, and how consistent you are. But it always comes if you persist. Always. The compound effect. Let me show you why momentum is so powerful by looking at what happens over time. Day 1. You take a small action. It feels insignificant. You don't see any results. You wonder if it's even worth it. Day 7. You've taken the action 7 times. You still don't see dramatic results. But you feel slightly more capable, slightly more confident. The action is slightly easier than it was on day 1. Day 30. You've taken the action 30 times. Now it's starting to feel routine. You've built a pattern. You have evidence that you can show up consistently. The action is noticeably easier than it was at the beginning. Day 90. You've taken the action 90 times. It's now a part of your identity. You don't think about whether you'll do it. You just do it. And you're starting to see real, tangible results. Day 180. You've taken the action 180 times. The results are obvious. You've made substantial progress. And the action is so ingrained that not doing it feels strange. This is the compound effect. Small actions don't look like much on any given day. But small actions repeated over time create massive transformation. The problem is that most people quit somewhere between day 7 and day 30. They don't see dramatic results, so they assume it's not working. They give up right before the compound effect starts to become visible. But if you understand how compounding works, if you know that the results are building even when you can't see them yet, you're more likely to persist. Think about it like investing. If you invest $10 today, you won't wake up rich tomorrow. But if you invest $10 every day for 10 years, you'll have substantial wealth. The magic isn't in any single $10 investment. The magic is in the compounding over time. Your actions work the same way. The magic isn't in any single action. The magic is in the compounding of those actions over weeks, months, and years. The recovery protocol. Now let's talk about what happens when momentum breaks. Because it will break. Life happens. Circumstances change. You get sick, you travel, you have an emergency, and your streak ends. This is where most people completely fall apart. They think, well, I broke my streak. I failed. Might as well give up. But that's not how successful people think. They have a recovery protocol, a plan for getting back on track as quickly as possible. Here's the protocol. Step 1. Acknowledge what happened without judgment. I missed 3 days. That happened. Okay? Step 2. Identify why it happened. Was it unavoidable circumstances? Or did you choose comfort over commitment? Be honest. Step 3. Recommit immediately. Don't wait for Monday. Don't wait for the start of the month. Recommit right now, today. Step 4. Make your comeback action smaller than your original action. If you were writing 1,000 words a day, make your comeback action just 100 words. The goal is to rebuild momentum, not to immediately jump back to where you were. Step 5. Focus on getting back to a 3-day streak. Once you have 3 days in a row again, you've reestablished the pattern. Then you can build from there. This protocol keeps you from spiraling. It keeps one setback from becoming a complete collapse. It acknowledges that perfection isn't the goal. Persistence is. And here's something crucial. You're going to need this protocol multiple times. You're going to break momentum more than once. That's normal. That's human. The difference between people who succeed long-term and people who don't isn't that successful. People never break momentum. It's that they get back on track faster when they do. The long game. Let me end this chapter by zooming out and showing you what momentum looks like over years, not just days or months. When you build momentum consistently, something remarkable happens. Your baseline rises. What I mean is this. Your average day becomes better than your best day used to be. Your normal output becomes higher than your previous peak output. Your default state becomes what you used to aspire to. This is the real power of momentum. It doesn't just help you achieve specific goals. It fundamentally changes your capacity. Think about someone who's been working out consistently for 5 years. Their "I'm tired and don't feel like it" workout is probably more intense than someone else's "I'm fully motivated" workout, because their baseline has risen. Think about someone who's been writing every day for 3 years. Their casual, off-the-cuff writing is probably better than someone else's carefully edited work, because their baseline has risen. This is what you're building toward, not just achieving a specific goal, but raising your entire baseline so that what used to be exceptional becomes ordinary. And that changes everything, because when your baseline is high, achieving things becomes easier, not because you're working harder, but because you've built so much momentum that progress feels natural. The choice point. So here's where we are. You understand what momentum is. You understand how to build it. You understand what kills it. You understand how to recover when you lose it. Now you have to decide, are you going to play the momentum game intentionally, Or are you going to keep leaving it to chance? Because I promise you this. If you build momentum deliberately over the next 6 months, if you show up consistently, protect your streaks, stack your wins, and follow the recovery protocol when needed, your life will look completely different. Not because you'll have achieved some massive goal, but because you'll have become someone different, someone with momentum, someone who shows up, someone who does things. And when you're that person, goals become inevitable. They're not a struggle anymore. They're just the natural result of who you've become. But you have to start. You have to choose. You have to commit to building momentum starting today, not tomorrow. Because momentum, like compound interest, rewards people who start early and stay consistent. The best time to start building momentum was a year ago. The second best time is right now. So what's it going to be? Are you going to keep starting and stopping, riding the waves of motivation and losing momentum every few weeks? Or are you going to make this the moment where you commit to building real, sustainable momentum that carries you forward regardless of how you feel? Because once you have momentum, everything changes. The hard things become easier. The impossible becomes possible. And the life you've been dreaming about becomes the life you're actually living. That's the game of momentum. And you can start playing it right now. Let's talk about the ultimate question. How do you make all of this permanent? Because here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. Starting is hard. Building momentum is harder. But the hardest thing of all? Sustaining it for years. Most people can get fired up for a week. Some can stay consistent for a month. A few can maintain momentum for 3 months. But very few can turn temporary effort into permanent transformation. And that's what separates the people who actually change their lives from the people who just have good runs followed by collapse. The difference isn't willpower. It isn't motivation. It isn't even discipline in the traditional sense. The difference is that they've learned how to win consistently. They've built systems that work not just when they're motivated, but especially when they're not. They've created structures that make success inevitable rather than optional. And that's what we're going to talk about now. Not how to succeed once, but how to succeed over and over and over again until success becomes your default state. The identity transformation. Everything we've talked about so far, the action-first system, building momentum, overcoming procrastination, all of it leads to one fundamental shift, changing who you are at the identity level. Here's what I mean. Right now, you probably see yourself as someone who's trying to change, someone who's working on improving, someone who's attempting to build better habits. But trying is a temporary state. Working on implies you're not there yet. Attempting suggests you might fail. The shift happens when you stop trying to be someone and start being that person. When your identity changes from I'm someone who wants to exercise to I'm someone who exercises. From I'm trying to be a writer to I'm a writer. From I'm working on being more disciplined to I'm a disciplined person. This isn't semantic wordplay. This is a fundamental rewiring of how you see yourself. And when your identity changes, your actions align automatically. Think about it this way. If someone offers you a cigarette and you say, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit," you're leaving the door open. You're still identifying as a smoker who's attempting to stop. But if you say, "No thanks, I don't smoke," you've closed the door. You're identifying as a non-smoker, and non-smokers don't smoke. It's not even a decision. It's just who you are. The same principle applies to everything. When you identify as someone who shows up, showing up isn't a daily battle. It's just what you do. When you identify as someone who takes action despite discomfort, pushing through resistance becomes natural. When you identify as someone who honors commitments to themselves, following through stops being a struggle. But here's the question. How do you actually shift your identity? Through evidence? Through proof? Through accumulating actions that demonstrate who you are. Every time you show up when you don't feel like it, that's evidence. Every time you do the hard thing instead of the easy thing, that's proof. Every time you choose long-term gain over short-term comfort, you're casting a vote for your new identity. And when you accumulate enough votes, the identity shift happens. You don't have to convince yourself anymore. You don't have to fake it. You simply are that person. This is why consistency matters so much, not just for the results it produces, but for the identity it builds. Because your identity isn't determined by what you do occasionally. It's determined by what you do repeatedly. You are what you consistently do, not what you occasionally do, not what you intend to do, what you actually repeatedly do. So if you want to change who you are, change what you do every day. Start collecting evidence of your new identity. Build proof through action. And watch as the person you want to become gradually becomes the person you are. The systems mindset. Now let me show you why goals alone will never create lasting change. Goals are useful. They give you direction. They help you measure progress. They create targets to aim for. But goals have a fatal flaw. They're temporary. You either achieve them and lose motivation, or you fail to achieve them and lose confidence. Either way, once the goal is resolved, the behavior that got you there tends to disappear. Think about someone who sets a goal to lose 20 pounds. They work hard, change their eating habits, exercise regularly. They lose the weight, goal achieved, and then slowly they drift back to their old habits. The weight comes back because the goal was the motivator, and once the goal was reached, the motivation disappeared. This is why systems beat goals every time. A system is a set of behaviors you commit to regardless of outcomes. It's not about reaching a destination, it's about showing up consistently. It's not about achieving a specific result, it's about maintaining a process. Instead of, I want to lose 20 pounds, the system is, I eat whole foods and move my body every day. Instead of, I want to write a book, the system is, I write for 30 minutes every morning. Instead of, I want to build a successful business, the system is, I create value and serve customers consistently. See the difference? Goals are finite. Systems are infinite. Goals end. Systems continue. And here's what's beautiful about systems. When you focus on the system rather than the goal, you often achieve the goal as a side effect. The person who writes every morning eventually finishes a book. The person who exercises daily eventually gets fit. The person who consistently creates value eventually builds a successful business. But more importantly, they become the kind of person who writes, who exercises, who creates value. The goal might be reached, but the system continues. The behavior persists. The identity remains. This is how you win consistently, not by achieving one goal and then collapsing, but by building systems that you maintain regardless of whether you're moving toward a specific target. So the question isn't, what do you want to achieve? The question is, what system are you willing to commit to? Because the system is what lasts. The system is what compounds. The system is what transforms you from someone who occasionally succeeds to someone who consistently wins. The flexibility principle. Here's something that might surprise you. Rigid consistency is brittle. Too much structure creates fragility. I know this seems to contradict everything we've talked about, but stay with me. Yes, you need consistency. Yes, you need structure. Yes, you need to show up even when you don't feel like it. All of that is true, but you also need flexibility. You need to be able to adapt when circumstances change. You need to be able to adjust your approach when something isn't working. This is what I call the flexibility principle. Be rigid about your commitment, but flexible about your methods. What does this mean in practice? It means you're absolutely committed to showing up every day. That's non-negotiable. But how you show up can vary based on circumstances. Maybe your standard practice is to write for an hour every morning, but today you woke up sick. Do you abandon the practice entirely? No. You adjust. Maybe you write for 15 minutes instead. Maybe you just write one paragraph. The method changes, but the commitment remains. Or maybe your normal workout is an hour at the gym, but you're traveling and don't have access to a gym. Do you skip it? No. You do a 20-minute body weight workout in your hotel room. The method adapts, but the identity of someone who exercises daily persists. This flexibility is what makes consistency sustainable over years instead of weeks. Because life is unpredictable, circumstances change, energy levels fluctuate. If your system is too rigid, it breaks the first time something unexpected happens. But if you're flexible about methods while remaining committed to the identity, you can maintain consistency through any circumstances. The key is knowing the difference between adapting and quitting. Adapting is changing the method while maintaining the commitment. Quitting is abandoning the commitment because the method became inconvenient. Worked out for 20 minutes instead of 60? That's adapting. Skipped the workout entirely because you didn't have access to your usual gym? That's quitting. Wrote 300 words instead of 1,000? That's adapting. Didn't write at all because you didn't feel inspired? That's quitting. The distinction matters because adapting maintains momentum. Quitting destroys it. The environment design. Let me show you something that most people completely overlook. Your environment is constantly shaping your behavior, whether you're aware of it or not. You walk into your kitchen and see cookies on the counter. You're going to eat cookies. You walk past your running shoes by the door every morning. You're more likely to go for a run. You keep your phone next to your bed. You're going to scroll before sleep and immediately upon waking. Your environment is voting for certain behaviors and against others. And if you don't intentionally design it, it's probably voting against the behaviors you want and for the behaviors you're trying to avoid. This is why willpower-based approaches fail. You're trying to overcome your environment through sheer force of will. And willpower is a limited resource. Your environment is constant. The solution? Design your environment so that the default behavior is the one you want. Want to read more? Put books everywhere. On your nightstand, on your coffee table, in your bag. Make books more visible and accessible than your phone or TV remote. Want to eat healthier? Reorganize your kitchen so healthy foods are at eye level and easily accessible. Put junk food out of sight or don't buy it at all. Want to write every morning? Set up your workspace the night before, computer open, document ready, distractions eliminated. Make it easier to start writing than to do anything else. This is environment design, and it's one of the most powerful tools for winning consistently because it works with your psychology instead of against it. You're not relying on decision-making or willpower. You're making the desired behavior the path of least resistance. And humans naturally follow the path of least resistance. So look at your current environment. What behaviors is it encouraging? What behaviors is it discouraging? Then redesign it deliberately to support the person you're becoming. The energy management. Here's something critical that most productivity advice ignores. You have limited energy, and managing that energy is more important than managing your time. You can have all the time in the world, but if you don't have energy, you won't do anything meaningful with it. Conversely, if you have high energy, you can accomplish remarkable things in limited time. So the question isn't just, how do I make time for what matters? It's, how do I ensure I have energy for what matters? This means several things. First, protect your peak energy hours. Most people have a specific time of day when their energy and focus are highest. For some, it's morning. For others, it's late night. Whenever yours is, that's when you should do your most important work. Don't waste peak energy on low-value activities. Second, understand that different activities drain or restore energy. Some tasks are energizing, some are draining. Design your day so that you're not stacking all the draining tasks together. Intersperse them with activities that restore energy. Third, build in recovery. You can't operate at maximum intensity all the time. You need periods of rest, of lower intensity, of recovery. This isn't weakness. This is how you sustain high performance over time. Think of yourself like a professional athlete. Athletes don't train at maximum intensity every single day. They have hard training days and recovery days. They have intense seasons and off seasons. They understand that rest is part of the performance system, not separate from it. You need the same approach. Push hard, then recover. Sprint, then rest. Intensity, then restoration. This is how you win consistently over years, not just weeks. The community factor. Here's something else that dramatically increases your odds of long-term success. Surrounding yourself with people who are playing the same game you are. You become like the people you spend time with. This isn't motivational fluff. This is documented social psychology. Your behaviors, beliefs, and standards are heavily influenced by your peer group. If you're surrounded by people who procrastinate, who make excuses, who start things and don't finish them, you'll unconsciously absorb those patterns. It's not because you're weak. It's because you're human. We're wired to conform to our social environment. But if you're surrounded by people who show up, who follow through, who do hard things, those become your norms. Excellence stops being exceptional. It becomes expected. This is why community matters so much for consistent success. It's not just about accountability, though that helps. It's about normalization. When the people around you are doing the things you're trying to do, those things stop feeling hard. They just feel normal. So how do you build this kind of community? Sometimes it's finding existing communities, online forums, local groups, mastermind circles, where people are working on similar goals. Sometimes it's creating your own, reaching out to one or two people and saying, let's check in with each other weekly about our progress. Sometimes it's simply being more selective about who you spend time with, gradually increasing time with people who elevate you and decreasing time with people who drain you. The specific approach matters less than the principle. Surround yourself with people whose normal is the normal you want to have. The perspective shift. Now let me show you the mental shift that makes all of this sustainable long term. Most people think about discipline and consistency as sacrifice, as giving up things they want for things they should do, as choosing the hard path instead of the easy path. And when you see it that way, it feels like constant deprivation, like you're always fighting yourself, like you're always choosing against what you want. That's exhausting, and it's not sustainable. The shift happens when you stop seeing discipline as sacrifice and start seeing it as self-respect. When you stop seeing consistency as giving up what you want and start seeing it as giving yourself what you actually want most. You don't want to scroll social media for 3 hours. You want to feel like you're making progress toward something meaningful. You don't want to eat junk food all the time. You want to feel healthy and energetic. You don't want to procrastinate. You want to feel capable and confident. When you make the choice to show up, to do the hard thing, to take action, you're not sacrificing. You're choosing your deeper wants over your surface wants. You're honoring what you actually value. This reframe changes everything, because now consistency isn't a burden. It's a gift you're giving yourself. Discipline isn't restriction. It's freedom. Freedom from the chaos of living reactively. Freedom to create the life you actually want. And when you see it that way, it stops being a battle. It becomes something you want to do because you respect yourself enough to honor your own values. The long-term game. Let me end by zooming all the way out and showing you what this looks like over a lifetime. Most people play short-term games. They think in terms of weeks or months. They want quick wins, fast results, immediate gratification, and there's nothing wrong with quick wins. We've talked about how important small wins are for building momentum. But if you only play short-term games, you miss the magic of long-term compounding. The real transformation doesn't happen in 6 weeks. It happens over 6 years. The real results don't show up in 3 months. They show up after 3 years of consistent effort. Think about what happens when you show up every single day for a decade. Not perfectly. You'll miss days. You'll have setbacks. You'll have periods where progress is invisible. But if you maintain the system, if you protect the identity, if you get back on track quickly when you fall off, what do you become after 10 years? You become someone who's accumulated thousands of hours of practice, thousands of small wins, thousands of pieces of evidence that you're the kind of person who does things. You don't just achieve goals. You become someone for whom achievement is normal. You don't just build momentum. You become someone who operates with permanent momentum. And that's when life gets really interesting, because you're not struggling anymore. You're not fighting yourself. You're just showing up and doing the work, and remarkable things happen as a natural consequence. This is the long-term game. This is what winning consistently actually means. Not winning once, not winning for a few months, but building a system, an identity, and a life where winning is just what you do. The final choice. So here we are, at the end of this journey together. You now understand more about action, momentum, and consistency than most people will ever learn. You have tools, you have systems, you have strategies. But all of that means nothing if you don't use it. So I'm going to ask you one final time. What are you going to do with this information? Are you going to read this, feel inspired for a few hours, and then go back to exactly who you were before? Are you going to tell yourself you'll start tomorrow or next Monday or when things calm down? Or are you going to make this the dividing line in your life? The point where things actually changed, not because you learned something new, but because you decided to be someone new. Because here's the truth. You already know enough. You've always known enough. The information was never the problem. The problem is that you've been waiting to feel ready, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for certainty, waiting for motivation. And while you've been waiting, time has been passing, days turning into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. And you're still standing in the same place, still dreaming the same dreams, still waiting for someday. But someday is not a day of the week. Someday never comes. The only day that exists is today. And today, right now, in this moment, you have a choice. You can choose to be the person who takes action, who builds momentum, who shows up consistently, who wins not once, but over and over and over again, not because it's easy, not because you feel like it, but because you've decided that's who you are. That's karma as strategy. That's action as identity. That's the system that changes everything, and it starts with one decision, one action, one moment where you choose differently than you've chosen before. This can be that moment, or it can be just another piece of content you consumed and forgot. The choice is yours. It's always been yours. The question is, what are you going to choose? Because 5 years from now, you'll either look back at this moment with gratitude, knowing this is when everything changed, or with regret, wishing you had just started. The difference between those two futures is decided right now by what you do in the next 5 minutes, in the next hour, today. So I'll ask you one more time. What's the one thing you're going to do right now? What's the smallest action you can take in the next 5 minutes that moves you toward the person you want to become? Don't think about it. Don't plan it. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Just do it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.